Am I the a-hole for not inviting the neighbors to our daughter's birthday party and then awkwardly kicking them out? Hi. Yesterday was my daughter's 8th birthday and we did a princess-themed party. The only people invited were family or family friends. My relationship with my neighbors is meh. We wave if we see them, but otherwise we don't talk to each other or anything really. During my daughter's birthday party, held in our yard that is semi-fenced, I started to bring out the cupcakes for the kids. When handing them out, I noticed that 2 kids were definitely not invited because they weren't my niece's nephews or of a family friend. I then realized they were my neighbor's kids. I paused handing out cupcakes to ask why they were here, and one of the kids just shrugged and said, "My mommy said I could go." I told them it was inappropriate to just come here. My husband escorted them back to their parents' house. All the neighbors' houses are decently spaced, so it's not necessarily dangerous, but we felt better if someone walked with the kids. Later on, I think after we did the whole cake cutting, our neighbors approached again. This time it was both parents and the kids. I asked what they were doing and they looked confused, saying they were joining the party. I was a little agitated now and sternly said they were not invited, that this was a birthday party for my daughter and family friends were invited. It was awkward as they left and the kids kept whining as they did. Next day, today, I got a handwritten letter in my mailbox about how I treated the neighbors rudely and it's expected to share community events. Was I too rude, harsh?
So your entitled neighbors regard a private party as a community event? Fortunately, you are not obligated to share their delusions. Not the a-hole, but you should probably put up security cameras and a note in their mailbox explaining the difference between community events and private parties would be entirely appropriate.
Either that or show up while they're eating dinner tonight. Just make yourself a plate, see what happens.
Not the a-hole starred as you mean to go on. It wouldn't have been a one-off. It would have been confirmation of their weird thinking that they are automatically welcome at any event you hold in your yard. You handled it correctly. They weren't invited, and them living nearby doesn't mean they get to attend any neighborhood party or barbecue they can see from the street.
Not the a-hole, it wasn't a community event. It was a private party, and I would make sure everyone knows that they tried to invite themselves.
Not the a-hole. In my own experience, when children who live directly next door to each other aren't friends, there's generally good reasons, so I imagine there's just cause as to why these 2 were not invited. Regardless, for parents to just send their kids along to someone else's yard to join in on an event is not only awful adulting, but also awful parenting.
Not the a-hole, how in the ever-living fuck is a private party a community event? Neighbors need to look up the meaning of community. Give them a dictionary and highlight it.
As a little kid, I showed up at so many BBQs. I would smell yummy food, so I would just go in the yard. My mom found out later and was mortified. The families usually fed me. My mom figured it out because I was never hungry on nice sunny weekends. She ended up having a huge barbecue to thank everyone for feeding her little gatecrasher, LOL. I think she finally got through to me that I was rude. I would never send my kids over to a private event. Not the a-hole at all.
Am I the a-hole for being rude to my boyfriend after he withheld salt from me? My female 27, boyfriend, male 30, are currently on vacation with his family. I have volunteered to cook most nights because I love to cook and am the best at it out of the entire group. This evening, I was making a dish for everyone and asked my boyfriend to please get me an array of seasonings for this specific dish: MSG, soy sauce, pepper, and salt. He then said, "If you're using MSG, do you really need salt?" To which I explained that MSG is not salty, has 1/3 of sodium content to regular salt, and that dishes if they are using MSG will still typically require salt. I was cooking outside on a griddle and the dish comes together quickly, so I was not able to go back to grab any additional seasonings. I realized shortly afterward that he did not include salt, just 3 of the 4 things I requested. When asked, he said we didn't need it. I tried the food, it was bland, so he then proceeded to put on additional soy sauce, which it did not need. It needed fucking salt. Either way, I was defeated and needed to take it off, so I served it as is, without salt. Everyone upon being served said it needed salt and proceeded to salt their own dishes. My boyfriend stood by his decision and doubled down on his argument that you can't remove salt. but you can add it and that he preferred how it tasted as is. I was fuming because he has done this in the past and says I occasionally overseason oversalt food. However, it does not happen regularly enough to be an issue. Occasionally accidental. I do 90% of the cooking at home and he loves my food. We argued about it and he stood his ground that he prefers his food less salty and that if I salted it that he would have been SOL and not been able to eat any of it. However, the amount of salt it required was not enough to be overly salted and that I know for a fact the amount of salt I would have used he would have happily eaten it. I told him his behavior felt controlling and he hit me with I could have grabbed more salt myself, but again this dish if I stepped away would have burned quickly. Am I the a-hole for being angry and calling my boyfriend controlling for not just getting me the salt when I asked for it initially?
Of course, your boyfriend should be able to control the amount of salt or other ingredients in a dish when he's cooking. His actions do sound controlling and also rude and ungrateful. Sounds like it might be time for him to put on the chef's hat and gain some perspective or gratitude. Not the a-hole.
Not only controlling, but completely unreasonable. Everyone had to salt their food and he still dug his heels in and fought about how he was right. This is not someone you can have constructive conversations with.
Not the a-hole. The way he's behaving is childish and controlling, and honestly, if you ever do cook, you should have someone else helping you and not him, considering the fact anything without even just a bit of salt just tastes extremely bland. He saw his family's reaction and he more than likely felt some embarrassment deep down, but didn't want to show it and instead acted out and continued to act as if he was right to not give you what you asked for.
Not the a-hole, but Opie needs to stop arguing with her boyfriend about salt content and just say, if you dislike how I season, cook it yourself or shut up. Then stick to this. The problem is that simple, especially because amount of salt is a personal preference, so the argument will never end.
Fuck him. He won't be able to eat it? That's some childish shit. Tell him if he doesn't give you the salt again, he has to find another girlfriend. Seriously, he ruined your food and ruined dinner for multiple people because he couldn't get the food exactly how he wanted it. Please realize how selfish this is and how willingly he did this. Now think of what he will do if you say need a medication that has side effects which inconvenience him. Is he going to withhold your medication? Sounds crazy, but ruining dinner for a group of people over salt is pretty crazy.
The answer: that's fine, honey. I'll put a portion aside for you before I season the dish. Now would you pass me the salt please so I can make everybody else's meal delicious? Then serve him the unseasoned dish. Wish granted. Mischievous compliance is warranted.
Am I the a-hole for not letting my wife hijack a free vacation? One of my 39 male hobbies is entering raffles, sweepstakes, radio contests, etc. I've won tickets to concerts, sporting events, some household items, gift cards, but never a grand prize like a car or vacation. Until last month when I won a free trip for 4 people to Florida for 5 nights. Obviously, I was super excited and told my wife, 38 female, about it right away. After our initial excitement wore off and we started talking about details, it became apparent we had conflicting ideas about this trip. Before I could even make suggestions about what I want this trip to be, my wife brought up how excited her 11-year-old daughter would be and how we could go to Disney, SeaWorld, etc. She then said that we can bring her mom with to help watch her daughter so that we could have some time for ourselves. She was so excited about it and was getting wrapped up in planning things without even hearing what I wanted. I told her that all of that sounds like fun, but I was thinking that we could invite another couple and have it be an adult-only trip instead of bringing my stepdaughter and mother-in-law with. She did not like my idea one bit and told me that she wouldn't feel right taking a free trip like that and leaving her daughter behind. She also said that her mom has never been to Florida and this would be a perfect opportunity for her to go there. We argued back and forth a little bit before deciding to take a break and come back to it before telling anyone about it. Well, that lasted about 24 hours before my wife let it slip to her daughter that I had won a trip. So, of course, stepdaughter immediately got excited about it and started looking into all the things she wants to do. I asked my wife why she told her daughter, and she said it was an accident, which, come on. It started a fight between us and emotions got a little high. I told her she was wrong to bring her daughter into this after we agreed to wait, and that I never agreed to take stepdaughter or mother-in-law on this trip. I told her that I was the one who won the trip, and she was acting like this was something specifically for her. She told me I was being selfish, and that we should include those closest to us in something like this, especially when neither stepdaughter or mother-in-law have ever been to Florida. She said that bringing another couple and leaving her daughter home would be cruel, especially now that she's so excited about it. I told her that her daughter is only excited about it because she decided to blab to her about it instead of waiting like we had agreed. I told her if she wants to bring her daughter and mother-in-law, then she can also pick someone else to go with because I would rather stay home by myself than go on a vacation where I don't get to be involved in any decisions. I said that if she wants to go that route, she certainly can, but I'm not paying for any of it. We have separate finances. Now she thinks I'm being a jerk and should be happy about having a free family trip. Edit. The trip is to Fort Myers, not Orlando.
Not the a-hole. While I see both sides of the coin, what it comes down to is that as you won the trip, you should get to decide how it is used. I would certainly be bummed if my spouse won a trip and then wanted to take it without me, but that's not what is happening here, and I think your wife's insistence on controlling this and her judgment of you for not having the same vision for the trip are really unfair. You aren't a bad person or a bad stepfather for wanting to take an adult trip. Lots of couples do this. It's not cool of her to act like you're shitty just for having another idea. And I agree with you that it was especially out of line for her to tell her daughter, accidentally or not, about the trip because she knew that would make it harder on you. Really not cool. The one other thing that stands out to me is about how you initially only refer to your stepdaughter as your wife's daughter, repeated references to her daughter. I wonder if there's a dynamic in play here where your wife worries your stepdaughter doesn't feel like she's part of the family, or if the girl worries about losing her mom, etc. It's a stretch based on what I'm seeing, admittedly. Just thought I'd plant the seed that if you think there's anything sticky in your blended family situation, that this trip is surfacing, you should talk about that separately.
Info. You talk about your wife and her daughter. Is that not your stepdaughter? Are you not married to your wife? This whole thing reads like you're not really a part of your own family, and it's weird.
Yes, she is my stepdaughter, and I did refer to her that way in the post. Not sure why so many people are hung up on phrasing and using it to try and infer any deeper meanings into our lives other than word choice. My stepdaughter and I get along fine and I love her. But that doesn't mean I want to spend this trip waiting in lines at Disney or Universal. The trip isn't even to Orlando, it's to Fort Myers. So, getting to Disney would require a lot more work than my wife thinks it will.
Yeah, that's not a quick drive, especially when you have to go through a few major cities. Traffic can make it 4+ hours each way.
Not the a-hole bordering on everyone sucks here. The reason it's borderline everyone sucks here is because you're married. You both need to be open to discussing how to play out an unexpected windfall like this, and you seem oddly contemptuous of your stepdaughter. The reason it's not the a-hole is, you did win the trip, and therefore should get a weightier vote on the outline of the trip. Your wife is absolutely attempting to emotionally blackmail you into doing the trip the way she wants by telling your stepdaughter. She definitely decided the trip was for her and not for you being both of you.
It's not contemptuous to want an adult's trip because family trips are typically about what the kids want more so than the adults. There's not a lot of freedom to be spontaneous.
Not the a-hole. It's true that in marriage, communication and compromise are the keys to resolving conflicts, but it seems like your wife stepped over those crucial elements by making unilateral decisions regarding the trip. The trip you won should be a collaborative decision, not a presumption on her part to include just her family without respecting your wishes. Moreover, her decision to prematurely excite her daughter about the trip without your consent was a strategy to box you into a corner, which is a manipulative move and not indicative of a healthy partnership dynamic. This is especially concerning considering the separate finances aspect. It feels like a boundary issue as well. You are allowed to envision your own happiness, especially about a prize you won. Her inability to see your perspective or offer a respectful compromise is troubling. It may be worthwhile to explore deeper issues at play within the relationship dynamics, especially considering your stepdaughter's place in the family structure and how everyone's needs can be met while still respecting individual desires.
What do you think of these stories? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories.